Hello, everyone, and welcome to Maximizing the Value of Generative AI in Copilot Studio. I'm Lauren Mills. I'm a principal software engineer on the Copilot Studio team. I've been working in conversational AI at Microsoft for the past 8 years and a little over 3 years in Copilot Studio. I've seen many iterations of our conversational AI technology, and I'm very excited about the direction that we're going and how generative AI has really elevated the agent building experience to not only be a rich experience for your customers, but also a pleasure to work with and author. Today, I'm going to talk through some of our generative AI features. I'm going to focus on demos of how these features work, but also how you can customize them with additional instructions and descriptions. We're starting with knowledge, then we will go to topic authoring with natural language, and then we will end with generative orchestration. And this order indicates kind of the ease with which you can add these features into your Copilot, knowledge being the easiest to start with. So with that, let's jump into a demo of the knowledge experience. All right, so let's start with knowledge. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to be using a retail sort of scenario. So everything here will revolve around orders, returns, different things like that. So I'm going to start off with something simple. I'm going to add just a website. In this case, I'm using the Microsoft Store website. And we're just going to add it with the default settings and then test it out. Great. OK. So let's go over to our test panel. I've added some buttons here to make it easy to test. And we're going to look for the return policy. OK, so I got a nice printout with details from the site. Let's go see a little bit more about how this works. In the classic mode of Copilot Studio, we add a conversational boosting topic to every new agent. And this topic uses the Create Generative Answers node to query your knowledge sources and then respond. There are a few different settings that you can configure here to control the behavior. Important ones are content moderation level, so you can set this at a global level in the settings, or you can set this at a node level. For content moderation, low means you will get more results, but your accuracy will be lower. And then high means you may get fewer results, but your accuracy will be higher. And medium is in the middle. You can also add custom instructions here around how the result and the response is created. In this case, I'm fairly happy with what it's created, but I could add things around tone or anything like that. You can add those custom instructions here. But this was a simple knowledge source. I want to show how you can integrate knowledge with Dataverse. So I have a few different Dataverse tables set up, one for products and one for stores. So I'm going to add those here and show how we can use knowledge to query the data in these tables and answer users' questions. I actually need to add both tables. So we'll go do that. OK, so I have two selected. OK, and we can see both tables are here, and we have the knowledge description. From my earlier testing, I found that this description is not sufficient to let the LLM know how these two tables are related. So I have an additional instruction I'm going to add from earlier on in my testing that just outlines how the two tables are related. There may be a better way to do this, but I am fairly new to Dataverse and working with tables. So for now, this has worked for me, and so that's what I'm going to show you. So I've just told it what column in the product table tells it which store it belongs to and what that means in the context of this conversation. I'm going to add this knowledge source. OK, so we've added our knowledge source, and now let's test it out. We're going to ask what stores have this particular product available. And we can see that product B is available for purchase at store B and is located in Chicago. So this is an example of how we have used instructions to query the data that we have in Dataverse and join those different tables to create an interesting experience for your customers. Now I want to show natural language to topic authoring. For anybody who's used Copilot Studio for any amount of time, you know that topics are the core building block of an agent. And we introduced this feature a little while ago now to create new topics from a description. And what this will do is it takes your description and it creates a topic using our nodes, which can really help jumpstart your topic authoring process. But there are some limitations, and I'm going to discuss them in a second. So I'm adding this topic called Get Order Details. We're going to ask for an order number. I'm mentioning getting results from an API. And then finally, I want to send an adaptive card with these particular pieces of information. So we have our topic here, and you get a nice experience here that describes what you asked for, what was created, and then some different examples for iterating. I'm not going to use this right now. I really want to highlight some of the limitations of this. So yes, it did give me a jumpstart with trigger phrases and a question node and a message node. But if you can see, I actually have a number of errors here, and that's because it wasn't able to make the API call that I need. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to call the connector, a custom connector that I've created, to make this topic work end to end. So I've added my connector, I'm going to wire up my variables, and then finally I'm going to update my adaptive card with the correct variables. So it did its best, the LLM did its best to try to figure out what the names of these variables should be. But because it wasn't able to make the API call, it did not have the correct variable names available. So this is a great tool to use if you have a lot of topics, you're working on adding new topics, but you're not quite ready to take the deep dive into fully AI-powered experiences. It's a great start. Another positive is if you're just getting used to AI, it's author-facing and not user-facing. So if someone uses this in their Copilot, this doesn't mean that anything that their user sends will be sent to AI or anything like that. So this is a great way to get started. So I'm going to save this topic, test it out. Okay, ask me for my information. And it's going to show me a card here. Okay, great. Now I want to show you one level more deep in generative AI, which is using connector actions with generative slot filling. So if I go and I add an action and I reference my same get order details custom connector, you'll see that I have a slightly different authoring experience here. I have a name and I have a description. It says description for the agent to know when to use this action. In this case, we're actually going to redirect to this action directly from a topic, and it will not be called by an LLM directly. But this instruction is still important. I'm going to add a bit of detail here around how I want this action to respond. Okay. So when this connector runs and it looks up an order, I want it to respond with, I found your order, and a summary of those order details. I'm going to leave authentication the same. Check the inputs. For the sake of the demo, I'm actually going to set this order number to a fixed number just to save us a little bit of time so I can show you more things. But you can configure inputs even further. You can configure them with descriptions and instructions on how to fill them. I'll show that a little bit more further on. So we do want the agent to use this action. We don't want to ask the user before running it, but we do want to respond, and we want to respond with the AI-generated message. So the instructions that I added here in the description will influence how this action generates its response. Okay, so let's go back to our topic. And now you'll see that I'm actually able to replace all of the things that were added, the question that we asked, the call to the connector, and the response, with this single action. So I'm going to say add an action, and I'm going to point to the plugin action that I've added. And we can try this out again and make sure that it works. And because we've hard-coded an order number, it's going to go directly to the response. You can see that it is using the instructions that I told it of how to respond, and it's printing out the order details. So this is how you can use AI slot filling in your topics without using our generative orchestrator, which will be what I discuss next. So let's talk about generative orchestration. Generative orchestration, rather than being driven by trigger phrases, is driven by descriptions. So let's start by turning on generative orchestration from the overview page. Okay, and we're going to go back and we're going to turn this topic off because it's actually not necessary anymore. So I find my get order details topic, I'm going to turn it off. And what we should see is when I restart, the action that we've already added should work just the same as that topic that we just had. You can see my hard-coded order number, and you can see the same sort of response. So the way that this works is by switching to generative orchestration. Now we're using an LLM, what we call our runtime, which looks at all of the tools that you have available in your agent. So tools meaning topics, actions, knowledge. And based on their descriptions, it will determine the right tool or tools to meet the user's ask. The main benefit over trigger phrase driven orchestration is it's more flexible. It can more easily identify a user's intent with less information upfront. And also it can create a plan with multiple tools based on a single intent, which is an improvement from trigger phrase based where you have one intent and one topic or action, etc. So let's try to add a second action. So once my user gets their order, I'm going to give them the option to have it sent to them as an email. Okay, so I'm going to customize this one a lot more than the last one I added because I want it to be pretty specific. I don't just want it to send any email. I want it to send the user's last response. So I'm going to change the name and the description accordingly. Okay, so I want to send a summary of the last response to the provided email address. And I'm also going to customize these inputs a little bit, like I mentioned before. So for the subject of this email, I don't want the user to have to specify. I actually want the LLM to generate a subject based on what we're doing. So I have here, create a short title based on the body and include the current date. You can see that I'm referencing another one of the input properties as well as just the current date, and it's going to be able to do this pretty well. And then for the body, all I want to do is summarize the last message. So let's find that. So the previous response to the user. Okay, and then I do want it to ask before it performs this action, because sending emails, maybe it's a little bit protected. You want to confirm before you do it. So let's confirm the recipient and make sure that that's going to look okay. All right, and then I do want it to respond, and I just want to say I sent the email. Let's add this action. So now I should be able to say that I want to send this last message to me in an email, and you can see here in our activity map the different inputs being filled. It knows my email address because I'm logged in. It has generated a relevant subject based on my instructions, and it has also pulled the previous message and set that as the body. So I can say yes. Great. And I should be able to see this email pop up in my inbox. And so that is an example of having multiple tools and how they can work together. But now, maybe I don't want the user to have to ask to send an email. Maybe I always want to give them the opportunity to send an email anytime they get their order details. So whenever you want two tools to work together, it's a good opportunity to add some details to your system instructions. System instructions, when it comes to orchestration, I like to view them as a way to control how tools are used together, but you can also give your agent an identity, certain tone instructions, or different output instructions. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to first tell it that anytime it calls the get order details tool, I'm actually going to take this part out, to call the email last response tool right after. In the instructions, you can reference tools by their name, and the planner will know how to do that. Another thing I noticed is in this output here, I have sort of a, it's not the best formatted date. It's a little technical, so maybe I want to format this date better. And when you're coding, you might typically have to do some formatting, add some different strings for how to format your date, right? And give it which pattern you want to use. But when you're using the LLM instructions, you can actually be a little bit more flexible. So I'm going to tell it that anytime it's responding to the user, to format any dates in the standard US date and time formats. All right, so let's try this out and see how these tools work together. Okay. So I click on order details. I should automatically be prompted to send this to myself in an email, and I am, because the system instructions know that anytime it calls the get order details, it should also call the email last response tool. And you can also see that my dates here have the correct formatting based on the instructions that I've added as well. Okay, so I've shown you how to add different actions, update the descriptions and instructions, and also update your system instructions to control how those actions are called. The last thing I want to show you in generative orchestration for now is the activity page. The activity page allows you to debug all of these different conversations, both in the test chat, but also once your bot is published. You can see the different plans that were created based on the user's query, and you can investigate failures or incorrect responses or incorrect tool selections and use this information to update your descriptions to refine your behavior. And with that, that is the end of the generative orchestration section and also the end of the demo. I hope that I've been able to show you some of the different generative AI features in Copilot Studio and how you can customize them beyond the out-of-the-box experience with descriptions, instructions, etc. So that concludes our demo of generative orchestration and our demo of the generative AI features in Copilot Studio all up. Hopefully, I've shown you the power of using generative AI features in Copilot Studio and also how you can customize their behavior using your instructions, descriptions, and various settings. Now that you've seen the features in action, here's some more resources that you can investigate to learn more. I've linked all of the details for the features that I showed in this presentation. I'd also like to call out specifically tips for authoring descriptions. And I've also added a few links for additional features you might be interested in if you're interested in AI in Copilot Studio, including our responsible AI documentation, Copilot Studio Agent Builder in Microsoft Copilot for Copilot integration, as well as AI Builder integration for more advanced prompt authoring directly in Copilot Studio. And with that, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to seeing what you build.